Why, hello there, homies. It's me, the homie Q, and I have a very important message for you about sharing, because sharing is caring. Every day, millions of homeless people suffer because they don't know about the Superhero Homies podcast. Thankfully, there's a way all of you can help. Simply tell your friends, family, and even your shitty coworkers about the podcast, especially them. Also, leave a review. 5 stars, please. This can help miserable fucks all over the world to get a sense of humor and learn more about comic books. Hell yeah. Thanks, guys. This has been a public service announcement from the Superhero Homies. What up, homies? Back again for another edition, a continuation, a sequel, if you will, to an episode that was released a week ago. This is actually going to be the review for Flashpoint. Last time on Superhero Homies, when I talked about Flashpoint, I failed to recognize just how long-winded I can be and also how much shit there is to talk about. It's crazy because in my hand right now, I have the trade paperback to Flashpoint. What I used for like my research material and whatnot was the omnibus. And this Omni, the Flashpoint Omni, I picked that up whenever it came out, a year or two ago, whenever that was, because I really enjoyed the story and I always really dug the artwork. I thought that the art was pretty amazing. I think it was Andy Kubert who did most of the primary art, and it's fantastic and a really cool story. I didn't expect the omnibus to be that much more in depth in terms of the story and the world of Flashpoint, simply because as a guy who has collected a fair share of comic books and omnis and superhero reading material over the years, I can tell you that some of the event omnis can be a little bit lacking. And by event omnis, I mean omnis that are structured around certain big events that take place in the Marvel universe or the DC universe or whichever universe. Most of them just come across as filling pages, just giving certain writers or artists, editors, whoever, a reason to make so much money, put out another book. But I gotta be honest, the Flashpoint Omnibus is one of those omnis that I'm not gonna say that it's necessary reading, because it's not necessary to understand the story of Flashpoint, but my goodness, it really does enhance the reading experience. So if you guys, this is free clout for DC, but if you guys have the spare change, and if you guys really enjoyed the Flashpoint story, I gotta recommend picking up the Flashpoint Omnibus. I've had it on my shelf again for all this time, and I've only ever really looked into certain parts of it. I never really did a deep dive into it until recently, and man, it's some good shit. Speaking of good shit, the opening little ditty at the top of the podcast was a PSA from the Superhero Homies, which is me. I'm a part of that. I'm a superhero homie. But I'm not the only superhero homie. You guys are also superhero homies. So help the homeless people out there by sharing the podcast and by rating and reviewing the podcast. That really does help us out a lot. That helps us out in the algorithm. I've learned recently that the podcast hasn't been showing up properly for a lot of people. Even though nothing's changed, the structure is the same, the release schedule is the same, if not increased. Everything is the same except for visibility. So for whatever reason, we are not as visible as we once were. And I'm not sure why that is. Even updates in terms of people getting notified of new episodes, for some reason, even that isn't as regular as it should be. And so I'm not really sure what the deal is there. I am currently looking into it to see if there's anything more that I can do to help boost the visibility. But in the meantime, one thing that definitely helps is you guys rating and reviewing the podcast and telling all your cool ass friends, or even the not cool ones, about it. That right there will always be the best thing that helps the podcast grow. So thank you guys in advance for that. And before we get started here, just going to give you guys a little bit of a preview of things to come. So there is actually a lot going on right now with the podcast, which always has me excited because that means I get to do this more. So on the list of things that we have coming up here, if you guys don't get sick of hearing my voice here on this podcast, then you can actually hear my voice on Entertainment Evolved. Just recently, I had the honor, the pleasure, and the privilege to be on there with the homie Caleb and the homie Joe. And they invited me on to talk about a TV show called The Shield, a fantastic TV show that only recently had I watched any of it. So we covered the first half of that TV show recently on Entertainment Evolved. And that was a fantastic episode. If you guys are into, this isn't a typical cop procedural show like Law and Order or NCIS. This is more like a more fast-paced version of The Wire. It's kind of how it feels. So if you guys are into that, definitely check out The Shield. It was a great show and a great episode that we had the opportunity to record. But that's not all. I will also be on Entertainment Evolved again here soon to talk about the new and latest and hopefully last Indiana Jones movie, Dial of Destiny. And as of this recording, I haven't seen the movie, but by the time most of you hear this, I probably will have seen the movie. And that means that the review that Caleb and I will be doing will probably be up shortly. So again, that's an Entertainment Evolved, and so you guys be sure to go and check that out. I'm looking forward to seeing this movie, whether it's good or bad. Who knows? I don't know yet. I've only heard things, but sometimes critics or reviewers can be wrong. I mean, you guys disagree with me all the time, right? So I get it. But yeah, that is a couple of things coming up here. But also, some of you may also be wondering about Secret Invasion. Why haven't we covered Secret Invasion yet? What's going on with that? I got to be honest. Secret Invasion snuck the fuck up on me. Just like a squirrel, I didn't see it coming. So I will be reviewing Secret Invasion. As a matter of fact, I'll be pulling double duty by reviewing the first two episodes here close to the end of the week. And then from every week afterwards, I'll be doing an additional shorty episode at the end of every week, covering every episode. And somewhere along the line, too, I'm going to try to give you guys more of a deep dive into the Secret Invasion comic book, because I think that's a great comic. I really enjoyed that little comic book there by Brian Michael Bendis. I had a lot of fun reading that back in the day, and I think it still holds up even now. So there's a lot of really fun stuff in that comic book, and I know that the TV show varies wildly from what I can understand, but hopefully they can keep the integrity of that comic book alive, and really what made that comic book so special and so unique. Again, I know that a lot of elements are missing, mostly because the Secret Invasion comic book features heavily a lot of superheroes. It also heavily features the likes of Tony Stark, who was in deep shit by the end of that book, spoiler alert, and also Norman Osborn is heavily featured as well, for reasons I'll get into once I cover the story. Also, something else you guys can look forward to is the 4th of July celebration. And what I mean by that, well, I can't think of a better way to celebrate the 4th of July by talking about the boy in blue himself, not that flag man, a different flag man, Captain America. I just realized that there's actually someone called Flag Man, and nope, not him. I'm talking about Steve Rogers himself. And so I will be having the homie Brendan and Oz on, and maybe another homie. We'll see. But at the very least, the three of us will be on, and we will be discussing Captain America. But hopefully they don't hear this beforehand. We'll actually be discussing the original 1990s Captain America movie. This was the one that you guys may have heard me talk about before. This was the one that I saw back when I was a kid, and I I didn't know what it meant to hate a movie, but I kind of realized that I hated that one. It was all over the place for me, and it put me off for a while from for Captain America and for trusting live action superhero movies. And so yeah, if you guys are going to be interested in that, which I think you definitely will be, then be sure to check that out. One more thing, and then we get started here. But if you guys are interested in hearing that episode early, or uh, a plethora of other episodes early, then an easy way to do that would be to go to my Patreon page. That is patreon.com/superhero homies. And not only do you guys get access to exclusive content, for example, Brendan and I just discussed the 1987 Masters of the Universe movie. That was a trippy experience. And if I do say so myself, that was an incredibly fun podcast. You guys can get access to that and dozens of other exclusive episodes on the Patreon page, but you guys can also get early access there as well. So if you guys want to get these episodes early, then you guys can sign up for Patreon, and that is an easy way to get early access. For just $3 a month, you guys get access to a lot of cool shit. So there is that. With that being said, I know that you guys are here so that we can finally discuss Flashpoint. This story, I think, has a lot of merit to it and a lot of fun times. And this is one of the definitive Barry Allen stories, I think. And it's not just because it's this big world changing event, it's also because this story works very well on a smaller level. So, on a small scale, this story is very effective because of what it does to the character of Barry Allen. And the whole idea of superheroes is sacrifice. And are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to put yourself at risk? Are you willing to give up the things that you want and love the most? And for Barry Allen, that's kind of what it comes down to. So, on the previous episode that I did, The Road to Flashpoint, I mentioned how there would be some spoilers for the Flash movie. By this point, I'm pretty sure that most of you who want to see the movie have seen it. But with that being said, I will still include a small spoiler filled section at the end. And that section will just be about comparing what the movie did to what the comic book did, and maybe where the movie could have done better had they applied the comic book a little bit more. So that section will be at the end. But for those of you who have seen the movie, you guys will be able to pick up on that all throughout this episode here. It's also going to be fun for me because kind of reading and even rereading through some of this stuff, this additional material from the Flashpoint Omnibus, it is fascinating looking at the world of Flashpoint, seeing how this world functions, seeing how people are different. And you get a taste of that if you guys, watch Flashpoint Paradox, if you guys just read the 5-issue miniseries. But the omnibus really does a great job of going in depth and giving us more information about so many of these different groups and heroes and affiliations and just the world as a whole. Like, this place is really kind of fucked up, and but in a fun kind of way. It's the fun kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? All right. So with that being said, guys, we'll go ahead and get into it. The last thing we spoke about was the road to Flashpoint. We first spoke about the Reverse Flash one shot, which was a retelling of his origin story. And that was fantastic. I mean, if you guys can read nothing else besides the Flashpoint story, read that. That was so much fun. And then there was a short tie-in called Road to Flashpoint, which is, of course, just that. It leads us directly into Flashpoint. The only thing you guys need to take away from that, again, is Barry Allen is struggling with the idea of having family again, in lieu of realizing that Reverse Flash is the one who killed his mom in the first place. This is around the time that revelation was just recently dropped to Barry, that bombshell. Up until this time in the comic book canon, we didn't know who killed Flash's mom, or we weren't really sure who did it. Flash just assumed maybe it was somebody else. Obviously, the government assumed that it was Flash's dad. But in reality, no, it was Reverse Flash who killed Barry's mom. Yeah, so there's that. I think I said something different earlier. But anyways, yeah, Barry's mom was killed by Reverse Flash. But not only that, Barry recently saw in kind of a faux mirage image his mom, but it wasn't just his mom as he remembered her. It was his mom as if she was alive currently. So like what she would look like as an older lady living in today's world, and that really fucked him up. And yeah, so essentially, I mean, there is an actual theme and story to the Road to Flashpoint that involves Bart Allen, this alternative version of Barry Allen called Hot Pursuit. I made fun of that terrible, shitty name, and Reverse Flash. So the story really centers around like those characters, and I thought that material was fine, it was okay, but I don't think that's really worth the read. What really got me interested in that Road to Flashpoint story was the idea that Barry still has not gotten over the death of his parent. And I mean, you can't blame him. The death of a parent is fucking atrocious. You know, that's got to be something incredibly hard to overcome. But it goes to show that even superpowers can't heal that wound. And it leaves us with Barry Allen visiting his mom's gravesite on her birthday. That's where it leaves us. And that's where we go into Flashpoint. So Flashpoint picks up with Barry Allen waking up at the police station here after having like kind of a what we can assume is maybe a wild dream of sorts. Uh, we see Barry Allen and he's just now waking up and he's not really sure what's going on. It's kind of a lot of bullshit here that's happening. But there's a case that needs to get to, and this is something that, again, I'm not going to get too much into the movie here, not into the end of it, but you know, even this very beginning is something, an approach that I wish the movie had taken. I understand why they didn't, but I thought that this would have been a much better approach because Barry just wakes up and then he realizes quickly that he doesn't have his powers. He doesn't have his powers, and he runs outside the station that he's working in, and he runs into his mom. And this just throws Barry for a loop. Imagine how it would be if you saw one of your deceased loved ones and they're back alive. Everything else in the world around you is different, but man, there's your loved one. And so there's Barry looking at his mom, and he's just beside himself because she's here. And that's when he realizes that, okay, something's not right here. He doesn't have his powers. His mom is alive. He doesn't know what's going on. And so he jumps to the conclusion that this has got to be the work of Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, the same gentleman, I use that very loosely, who we spoke about on the Road to Flashpoint heavily. But now he has to find a way to stop Eobard and to set things right. But also, this is his mom, and his mom was there because she was told by Barry that, hey, you know, you said you wanted to hang out with me on my birthday. You were gonna take me out. And but Barry, he's tripping balls right now. He doesn't have his powers. His mom is alive. The world seems to be similar, but yet very different. And on top of that, he's not married to Iris. So yeah, that's a big difference. As a matter of fact, at one point, he actually sees Iris Frenching some other dude. So that's got to sting to see your wife tongue deep on somebody else. But I mean, I guess such is life, or so they say. Anywho, after some questioning, Barry realized that okay, I gotta go get the Batman, and so he does. He goes and he pays a visit to Wayne Manor. I mean, of course, but why wouldn't you though? If your life is all fucked up, wouldn't you go to Wayne Manor? If you could find it. And here's the thing though, shit is a lot different here. And this is kind of where I want to pivot a little bit from the 5 issue miniseries and talk a little bit about this version of Batman, Flashpoint Batman as he's known. So Flashpoint Batman here is similar in the sense that he does use theatricality, deception, not so much. This man just straight up murders people like with no regard. But the differences between Flashpoint Batman and our primary Batman, they don't end there. There's a lot of differences. One of those differences is most obvious. Thomas Wayne is underneath the mantle this time. He's underneath the cowl. Thomas Wayne in this Flashpoint universe has survived, and Bruce Wayne has been killed. So here's a very important distinction here because I kind of have like three different sources running through my brain at the same time. I have the Flashpoint Paradox movie. I have the Flashpoint comics and the tie-in comics, and then I have the Flash movie. And so trying to keep all of that separated is a bit of a juggle. But it's interesting to me because if you guys have seen the Flashpoint Paradox movie, the animated movie, great movie, then you guys know that there is a small scene, a a glorified Easter egg, if you will, a strong cameo, a strong suggestion that Joker does exist in the Flashpoint universe, and that the Joker is Martha Wayne. Now, I say that's interesting because that tidbit only shows up in the Flashpoint Paradox movie. It was such a strong suggestion or such a strong entry in the Flashpoint tie-in. I believe was it Brian Azzarello who wrote that? I think that was him who wrote that. But it was such a cool kind of thing that he did when he made Martha be the Joker and Thomas is Batman. It was such a wild and fun introduction because it kind of throws the whole dichotomy on its head. Now, the thing that we have to remember is this. If you guys are just more familiar with the Flashpoint Paradox movie, then you see the scene where poor little Bruce is shot and killed in the alleyway. And that's the moment where, obviously Thomas Wayne is still stricken by grief, is soon to become Batman, but we see that it drives Martha crazy seeing her little boy get gunned down, and we see her makeup smear and it starts to look Joker-esque, and that's how we kind of put together that okay, she's the Joker in this universe. If you guys simply read the 5 issues of the Flashpoint comic book, that is not in here. The Flashpoint Paradox movie did not just make that shit up either. They got it from somewhere. They didn't just make it up. They got it from the tie-ins. And the Thomas Wayne tie-ins are some of the coolest in the entire Omni. And we see that the way that he behaves is completely different from the Thomas Wayne that we know in the mainline Batman comics. And it's also completely different from the way that Bruce Wayne would behave in any way, in any kind of way. So Thomas Wayne is still very much a very wealthy businessman, but his attitude is much different and his business is way different. Uh, I mean, if we're being honest here, he's not flirting with being a villain. I mean, yeah, he is. That's probably the best way to put it. He's right there on the line, man, between being um I mean, he's an anti-hero in probably the most truest and probably the truest sense of the word. So his businesses, he has hotels, he's got casinos, and even if you guys look at the Flashpoint issue 1 in the main 5 issue comic line, in one of the very first panels that you see Flashpoint Batman in, he's running on the rooftop, and in the background you can see it's the rooftop of Wayne Casino. But in the tie-ins, we get a closer look at this casino and how it operates, and kind of why Thomas Wayne built the casino in the first place. I'm not saying that casinos are inherently bad, but we know that in the world of comic books and superheroes, casinos are always ran by the corrupt and filthy politicians, or your Penguins or your Carmine Falcones, or your people like that. Is typically not ran by your upstanding citizens in the world of comic books. It's always the filthy. but Thomas Wayne is here running a casino. And the reason that he gives is interesting. He says that it brings the villains to him so he doesn't have to go and find them. I thought that was that was very telling about the way that this version of Batman thinks. It's also interesting because he's a very cold man, very cold. Let me put it like this: I think a very real criticism of the Matt Reeves Batman movie is that the way that Bruce Wayne and Batman behave were exactly the same. I love that movie, but I do think that's a valid criticism. That version of Batman didn't have any kind of mask that he would wear to put the public off from who he really was. He was always that brooding, angry looking, you know, billionaire who never showed his face. Whereas with this Flashpoint Batman, he's so fucking mean, like all the time. Nothing can make this man happy. And you know what? You can argue that even Bruce Wayne is rarely truly happy, but he can put on a mask and he can pretend and he can joke around and he can play like he's an idiot, aloof playboy, and he can play the role of the businessman who doesn't really belong there. He can play those roles, but beneath that facade, we know who he really is. The difference, though, is that with Thomas Wayne in the Flashpoint universe, the way he behaves is just like he behaves as if he doesn't even care if people would know that he is Batman. Another really big difference, maybe the biggest difference, is that Thomas Wayne does kill people. He straight up murders them. We see a scene that's a few pages into one of his tie-in issues, where it is Jim Gordon, who I believe is still the commissioner. Funny how not everything changes. I believe Jim's still the commissioner. Harvey Dent is the judge, and Thomas Wayne is, I'm not sure what he is or why he's there, but he's there for some reason. But the three of them are meeting together. And it could be because Thomas Wayne is still a very valuable businessman, very wealthy and very valuable businessman. And they're talking about how, or Harvey Dent, I should say, is very upset because his children, which are twins, they've been kidnapped by the Joker. And Harvey Dent obviously really wants his fucking kids back, and he is very upset with Thomas Wayne because the security at Arkham is not up to snuff, and it seems like every time someone gets put into Arkham, they die, they get killed, and they're insinuating that Thomas or that Flashpoint Batman is the one who's probably behind these murders of these villains. And it's interesting, right? Because they throw in names like Poison Ivy and Hush and some others. And so it's interesting that Hush even made it into this universe. But apparently he probably didn't last for too long because I think that Thomas probably killed him. But Harvey Dent makes the notion that, you know, all of these people get put into Arkham and they all wind up being killed, and the security sucks, and he needs Thomas and Jim to find his fucking kids and bring them back. If not, there's going to be scorched earth. There's going to be hell to pay, specifically for Thomas. You know, Harvey Dent, in so many words, threatens to shut down some of his businesses like Wayne Casino or the Wayne Hotels. You know, he's Harvey Dent. He's playing hardball here. He wants his kids back, and if Thomas doesn't deliver, then it's going to be fucking trouble. It's also important to note that the first time we see Thomas Wayne in one of the tie-in issues to Flashpoint is he's actually being psychoanalyzed by his psychiatrist, who is none other than Harleen Quinzel. That's right. She is not Harley Quinn here per se. She is she's a psychiatrist, the same way she was before the Joker in the main DC Comics fucked up her head. And she is there to psychoanalyze Thomas Wayne, and Thomas is very cold to her. He's very cold to everybody. He's a very unlikable dickbag. And the reason why he's so cold to her is because he knows that he's there just wasting his time. And the only reason that they're doing this little sit down is because he needs to get approved for his insurance, just to make sure that he's still of able body and mind. And if he doesn't pass, then he doesn't get, I guess, he doesn't meet the quota for his insurance to continue or what have you. And that would make a lot of people who are invested in him very upset. So, and you get the idea that she passes him despite the fact that they get nothing done, and they get nowhere. And Harleen, I don't think that she's trying to be rude to him in any way, but man, she just gets shut down by Thomas. She passes him, and it just seems like she passes him because if she doesn't, then that would be trouble for her, you know. So anyway, that's a little bit into the mind of Thomas Wayne here, but yeah, he's a cold blooded murderer here. Um, I kind of want to talk about some of the main themes of the story first, and I was going to talk about the war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons, but that is another really interesting tidbit that I'm going to save for a little bit later on tonight. But definitely put a pin in that because that is, for me, I think the most interesting aspect of all the tie-ins. And there's a lot of really cool tie-ins, but understanding more about that war gives us more information about the world, and understanding how that war came about was so cool and interesting to me. And again, there's some things that the movies or the 5 issue comic book kind of hint at, but just understanding more about how these things happened really kind of paint a bigger picture. So we'll just continue right now with the main storyline according to Barry Allen and what's happening with Barry. So yeah, Barry, he takes his mom's car and goes and pays a visit to who he thinks is Bruce Wayne. Upon entering the Batcave, he quickly realizes this crazy motherfucker is not Bruce. He is beating my ass right now. Who is this? Holy shit, that is Thomas Wayne. And so upon meeting Thomas Wayne, he explains himself that, hey, no, look, understand, I'm Barry Allen. I'm someone who you know, so I'm someone who you should know, but you don't. Uh, but Barry essentially tries to tell him that, hey, look, man, I get it. Uh, in this world, Bruce died, but where I come from, Bruce lives. And really, that is the thing that sets Thomas off. That's the thing that really causes Thomas to kind of halt and pause. Whenever you're reading about any of the tie-ins to Flashpoint that pertain to Thomas Wayne, you begin to understand that he feels like this world doesn't belong. It's not that he doesn't belong. He feels that this world doesn't belong. Like it is all out of whack. Like somebody in the DC universe created CERN, turned on the hydrogen collider, and their world split into a parallel universe, and their universe should not exist. That's the way that Thomas Wayne feels right now. That was kind of a deep cut for some of you guys, probably. Anyway, upon hearing that this crazy man who claims to be from a different version of reality says that his son lives, that's kind of enough for Thomas. And I think that some people may chalk that up to bad writing or rushed writing. I don't think that's what this is. I'm actually going to give this some bail, just because of the context of the character of Thomas Wayne in this Flashpoint story. We know that he's desperate. We know that time and time again, there's plenty of context clues here to support what I said earlier about how he feels that this world just does not belong, that it's a bad place. This entire world is bad, it's rotten to the core. And not only that, but they're on the brink of world destruction, and a lot of people don't even know that. This war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons is it's gonna spill over really soon, and everybody's gonna pay the price. And there just doesn't seem to be any kind of hope. There's no optimism in this world. Like it's all underneath the very thinly veiled surface is it's all a facade. This world is gonna crumble, and Thomas knows that. And so hearing that there is a sliver of hope, maybe this crazy man isn't crazy. Maybe this crazy man is actually telling the truth. There is maybe one or two other things that causes Thomas Wayne to maybe believe in what he's saying, and one of those is the Flash's ring. He reaches into his pocket and he realizes he has this ring, and for those who don't know, the Flash has a ring with the lightning bolt emblem on it, and that's where he stores his suit. And he ejects the suit, and the suit is yellow. So the suit is like the color of Reverse Flash. And this is where Barry tries to plead with Thomas, saying, "Hey, look, man, look, this isn't my suit. This is the work of the man who fucked up this entire universe in the first place. His name is Eobard Thawne. He's the Reverse Flash. He's toying with me right now because I don't have my powers. Listen, you have to help me get my powers so I can fix this universe. And that way your son will be returned, and the world will be as it once was." And I mean, really, that's all that Thomas needs to hear. Okay, you're going to fix the role so that is right again? All right, bet. Say less. And so then this is where they try to recreate the accident that caused Barry to become the Flash in the first place. So Barry was the way that Barry got his powers was he was working in the forensics lab one night, but there was a bunch of chemicals around. It was a dark and stormy night, and lightning came through, and it came through the window, struck the chemicals in just the right precision. So the right amount of chemicals and the right kind of chemicals mixed in with the lightning bolt hit Barry Allen, and ta-da, Barry Allen is the Flash. But now he doesn't have his powers in this universe. So Barry has to find a way to restore his powers. Barry, being a very smart man, he recreates the same kind of scenario where he gets struck by lightning and hopefully gets his powers. So he and Thomas, between the two of them, they're both very smart people. Thomas being a doctor, of course. They they strap Barry down on the like a kind of like a high roof area of Wayne Manor. Thankfully, it is storming out. Otherwise, they have to wait a very long time. They got the chemicals in place. Barry gets struck by lightning, and he gets fucked up. Nothing good comes of that. Yeah. So you also have to put in mind this: like Barry just got done getting fucked up by Thomas Wayne. Like Thomas Wayne beat the hell out of him, and now he just convinced Thomas Wayne that, hey, listen, things in this universe aren't right. Your son is supposed to be alive. Everything's supposed to be different. They're not. And Barry gets hit by this lightning, and all it does is fuck him up. And not only that, something else that's important to remember here is that the longer Barry stays in this form of reality, the more he forgets. So, what I mean by that is the memories of Flashpoint Barry are merging with the memories of Barry that we know from the baseline DC comics. So he's starting to forget things that have actually happened to him in the version of reality that he comes from. And now this new version of reality, this Flashpoint reality, those memories are starting to override his own. And so he's working on a very ticking time clock here. And spoiler alert, he's also working on a time clock because, again, this war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons, that's just going to end the world real quick if somebody doesn't get to the bottom of it. So, and again, we'll talk a lot more about that later. So, yeah, the whole recreating the experiment thing didn't quite work. Barry got really fucked up, but he says, nope, can I try it again? And so Barry, who's wrapped up like a mummy, he goes outside, gets hit by lightning again, and thankfully he gets his powers. Our boy is back, and thankfully, along with him getting his powers, is a healing factor. So he's not going to be burnt man Barry. Have you guys seen Dark Man? The movie Dark Man came out way back in the day, like the late '80s, like maybe '89 or so. I rented that movie countless times as a kid. I thoroughly enjoyed Dark Man. Liam Neeson starred that movie. Anyways, he's a man. Dark Man may be the inspiration for Hush. I know I'm on a tangent right now, but hear me out. The idea for Dark Man, he's like this dark vigilante superhero, and he's a guy who wears bandages because like his face is really messed up, right? Like he's kind of mummied up, but he disguises himself by wearing faces of other people, so he can look like anyone. That shit is Hush. I just broke the fucking world with this one, guys. Hush is based off of Dark Man. That's got to be it. And I'm only partially joking here. I'm actually mostly serious. I think that the villain Hush is based off of Dark Man. You heard it here first. Superhero Homies podcast. But the only reason I mentioned Dark Man in the first place is because that's kind of what Barry Allen looked like, wrapped up, all burned and scarred up. Anywho, Barry takes the yellow suit that was in his ring, and he does a little alterations to it, and he makes it look like his own. So he's got his old school suit back, and so at this point, Barry's saying that, look, I got my powers back, but I'm not really up to speed yet, pun intended. And he says, listen, we're gonna need some help here because I know that everything's not right in this world, but listen, if we're gonna do this, we need to do it right, and we need to stop Thawne. We need to, and also it's interesting to note this. Barry is also coming around more to ending the war even more than Thomas is, and this is going to be a recurring theme as well. The longer that Barry is here, the more that he learns about this war, this impending doom, the more that Barry wants to stop it. Even though Barry's ultimate goal is to erase this universe, he's a hero, and these are still people's lives. So Barry still wants to end this war and save as many people as he can. And so that's also a goal of his as well. Thomas isn't interested in that. Thomas only cares about ending this world and bringing his son back. That's all he cares about. And Thomas knows that means that he'll be erased too. He doesn't give a shit though. Anyways, Barry begins looking up other heroes who we can call for help. He looks for like his best friend, Hal Jordan. But Hal is not the Green Lantern here. Hal is he's still a Air Force pilot, and there is no Superman either, and that is probably like the biggest bombshell. No Superman, and upon looking at some records, he says that there would have been a like a spaceship that crashed around the same time your son was born. Referring to Bruce. And doing a little bit of digging, he finds that a space shuttle did crash, but instead of landing in Smallville, Kansas, it lands in Metropolis, and it kills a bunch of people. And then the craft is never really seen from again, and it's never really mentioned again. And so Barry knows that, okay, that's got to be Superman. We need Superman. Not only is he a powerhouse, but he says, I know Clark at his heart, and he's a good man. We can get him. This can be a great help. And Thomas is like, all right, bet if you think that this should have really helped, but getting to him is going to be a bit of a problem. Thankfully, Bruce knows someone who can help. And so now this is where we're going to kind of pivot here to talk about Cyborg. And when we talk about Cyborg here, it's going to be kind of a departure just a little bit from the mainline story, because Cyborg is definitely more directly tied into the war aspect. Cyborg is like the top cop. Okay, so he's like he's much bigger and bulkier here, and you get the idea that, no pun intended for you DC Comics nerds, but he's much more tapped into the grid. The grid is his evil Earth 3 counterpart, by the way. So chuckle at that if you wish. But he's much more tapped into the grid here because he is basically a government RoboCop, but he still has his personality. He still has his sense of morality for the most part. What he wants to do is rally together a group of heroes to wage a battle against the Atlanteans and the Amazons so that they can end this shit before it gets out of hand. So he works directly with the president, Cyborg does, and he's given access to a lot of shit. Obviously, because of his power set and his skill set, I mean, he has access to a lot of shit anyway. But because he's working directly with the government, you get the idea that he has even more clearance, even more power than what he normally has from where we see him in a typical DC comic book. So when we first run into Cyborg in the story, he he wants to bring together all of these kind of like underling superhero groups and people. And so we see people like instead of the Secret Six, it's the Secret Seven. They were a very cool DC group. I think Gail Simone may have been the first person to write the Secret Six. But anyways, one thing that's different here is that it's not six, it's seven. So the Secret Seven, they're there. Element Woman is also here. I thought that this was Element Girl. Element Girl was basically, she was just the female version of Rex Mason, I think is his name. Element Man, Metamorpho. I'm sure you guys know him by one of those names. But Element Girl from the mainstream DC comic books, she actually has been dead for probably 30 years now. And her death is actually quite tragic. She died in an issue of Sandman. So definitely, if you guys haven't read Sandman, that's another book to put on your to read list. But her issue in Sandman was extremely heartbreaking, very sad, and I mean, yeah, it's Neil Gaiman doing what he does best, making you think about death. Anyways, but this is not Element Girl in here. This is a new character who functions the same. Her name is Element Woman, but she seems to be a little bit off of her rocker. She's not mentally all there. We see Green Lantern, but it is not any of the Green Lanterns that we're immediately familiar with. This is Abin Sur. Abin Sur is the Green Lantern who crash landed on Earth, and his dying thought to his ring was to go and find a worthy replacement who has strong capacity to overcome fear and strong willpower. And of course, that's when we get Hal Jordan. But in this reality, he does not crash land on Earth. So he is still alive and well, but he is on Earth, and he is also willing to, still do his thing as a Green Lantern. So it's good. It's cool to see Abin Sur alive. The Shazam fam is here, and I think that his name is actually Captain Thunder here. It sounds like an off-brand soda, doesn't it? Like an off-brand, what's it called? Dr. Pepper? Captain Thunder. I amuse myself. Yeah, and then we got a handful of other heroes here, but you guys get the idea. Cyborg gathers together all of these heroes, and what it comes down to is this: like Cyborg wants them all to work with him to help overthrow Aquaman and Wonder Woman and the people who are help leading this war. He wants to bring together a group of heroes to overthrow these guys, but he also knows that he cannot do this unless Batman agrees to work with him. And Batman does show up, and I guess that's one thing that Batman has in common across all different realities is that he inspires people to want to fight for him or with him. And Batman, because he's such a nihilistic dickbag here, he doesn't want to do it. He does not want to fight with these people. He doesn't know hardly any of them. He doesn't trust any of them, and he doesn't think that they can win this fight, even if they all work together. Like the forces of the Amazons and the Atlanteans, that's just too much. So he doesn't believe that they can win the fight. He thinks they'll be throwing away their lives. Batman's out. But fast forward now to this point where Barry is presenting this idea to Thomas that, hey, I can restore the universe that I came from, but I'm going to need all the help that we can get, and so we need to find this Superman guy. Thomas knows that the only way that they can find where they're keeping this Kryptonian creature would be if they access Cyborg. Cyborg wants Thomas to work with with him to help bring together and rally together all these other heroes to overthrow this war. And so it's kind of like a domino effect here. And so Thomas and Barry, Flash, they do go to meet up with Cyborg. And Thomas tells Cyborg, "Hey, listen, I'm going to work with you. I will lead this army. I will, I'll be a team player essentially. But we need a favor from you. We need to know we need to know where this hidden base is, blah, blah, blah. We need to find Superman." And Cyborg is a little hesitant, very questionative, like, why the certain change of heart? What's in this base? Why do you want to go there so badly? But he's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm desperate right now. We're on the brink of war. And yeah, if you don't fight with me, then no one else will either. So yeah, I need you. So Flash, Cyborg, and Batman, they all work together to break into like this secret secured base. And when they do so, they actually find, and this is something that was very, very interesting here. There's, if you guys look carefully, there's actually 3 subjects being hidden way down here in this base/bunker place. 3. And the reason I say that's interesting is because we know they're only down there for one. One of them is Superman. Well, what's the other 2? One of them, if you have a keen eye and you're reading the 5-issue Flashpoint series here, then you see that in one of the subject cases is a lab room with looks like a long dead dog. That dog surely was Crypto. So Crypto was subject number 2. So now we know that 2 subjects were accounted for. Who was the 3rd missing subject? Boy, I had to know the answer to that one. And again, that's where I had to go to the good old Flashpoint omnibus here. And come to find out, it was another superpowered person. I believe he's also a Kryptonian. And I forget his name, but he was another superpowered Kryptonian here. And that spins off into another thing all of his own. That's actually part of like the Superman tie-in. Long story short, he's evil. He's a dickbag, super powerful. Superman needs to be the one to take him down. So, yeah. So I know you guys were dying to know that as much as I was. So I figured I would tell you guys that. So now they make it to Superman and they take a look at him and he does not look the same. He's being constantly bombarded with red sun rays. So that's keeping him depowered. He looks malnourished. I mean, my goodness. He looks as scrawny as can be. And, Cyborg and Batman are like, this is the guy you were talking about. Are you sure? And they break him out. And as they break him out, security is being alerted. And now security is high on their heels. And Superman, a.k.a. subject number 1, he takes off on them. He dips out on their ass. He pieces the fuck out. And upon seeing the yellow sun for the first time, he's just drawn to it. So he takes the fuck off. And I think it's Thomas who says, "There goes your big savior." So there goes the big gun you were talking about. He's out of here. And so now that leaves Cyborg, Batman, and Flash to contend with these guards here that are around them. So now I think that now is the part where I think we should really kind of put a focus on the war, because as we near kind of like the conclusion of this story here, it's important to talk about the war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons. But of course, before we get too far into that war, a word from our sponsors. Whether you're catching waves at the beach, bowling with your favorite group of friends, or stealing time at work, the Superhero Homies podcast has got your back. With nearly 1,000 hours in content, we are sure to keep you engaged for hours, like 1,000 of them, with our engaging, thought-provoking, mind-blowing discussions about comic books. Wait, hold on, what's that? You say you already listened to the Superhero Homies podcast? Well, how about Patreon? For $3 a month, $3 non-superhero movie reviews. Hell yeah. Video game discussions. Slap my ass. And now, you get early access to new episodes. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Stop fucking around and go to patreon.com/superhero homies, because you deserve it. That's right, guys. You deserve it. Go to patreon.com/superhero homies. Get early access to new episodes and exclusive episodes only there. Fun stuff. Anywho, we're talking about the war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons. This war, even on the surface level, I found to be super compelling and really interesting. But the more I delved into it, the more interesting it got. So a little bit of a backstory here about what's going on with this war is we have a very young Diana many years ago who wanted to break off from Themyscira to try to find the Word of Man. You know, Diana, she was always kind of an optimist, and she wanted to find a way to broker peace amongst men, or to help mankind. And in the process, her boat gets caught in some kind of storm, and it gets capsized, and she ends up damn near drowning. But thankfully, she is saved by a handsome young prince named Arthur Curry, aka the Aquaman. And upon meeting, there's a little bit of chemistry between those two, but really camaraderie. And from that point on, every year, the Atlanteans and the Amazons would meet, and they began holding this yearly treaty type ordeal where they would discuss ways that they can kind of trade goods and help each other out, how they're both different from man in the sense that they're both hidden from the main world, and they don't know if they can really trust mankind, things of that nature. So what ends up happening is that there is a marriage arrangement. Now, here's what's interesting about this marriage arrangement is that you get the idea that there is a marriage arrangement between Diana and Arthur, not so much because they're in love. Maybe there's some of that for sure, but they're mostly doing this because of the economical implications. In other words, you get this warrior princess from this hidden island that has a lot of really cool treasures and resources to marry this underworld Atlantean prince who also has a ton of resources and wealth and whatnot. And there's a lot of good that can come from there. They can do a lot of trading, and they can really help each other out. And so that's why the supporters want this marriage to happen. But as far as Arthur and Diana go, kind of maybe sort of not really. You get the idea that like maybe they're better off as friends, but there is still a connection there. But they agree with the marriage nonetheless. They don't really protest it. Eventually, Arthur, he does catch eyes with someone else who he ends up falling for. And that person is Mera. Now, if you guys have seen the Flashpoint Paradox animated movie, there's the scene where Wonder Woman is holding up Mara's severed head, and that's always been a gruesome scene. Again, that's something that's more in line with just the animated movie. Like that's not really how it went down in the comic books. I mean, we don't see that at all in the 5 issues, and even in the tie-ins, we learned that that's not really how it went down. But it is interesting to think about that now, just because Amber Heard and how many people kind of want her out of the Aquaman movies. I'm like, that's a fucking way to do it right there. So Arthur ends up falling for Mera and vice versa. And it's kind of one of those things where across all universes, maybe they're just meant to be. Kind of one of those ideas is what you kind of get from that. But they don't particularly act on it per se. So they're going through the marriage, Arthur and Diana. But during that, I believe it is Hippolyta, Diana's mom. She's killed, and when she's killed, the thing is pointed obviously at the Atlanteans, and they're being blamed for that. And so that is the beginning of this grudge, of this war. So the marriage does not take place. And then shortly thereafter, Mara is killed. And it's framed to look like Diana killed Mara. Diana did not kill Mara. She probably wanted to, but she didn't. So who actually killed Hippolyta and who killed Mara? It was actually Orm, the Ocean Master, who, if you guys look at the comic books, Orm is like a right-hand man to Aquaman in this universe. But it wasn't just Orm, the Ocean Master. It was also Hippolyta's sister. I forget her name. Damn, I forgot her name. But Orm and Hippolyta's sister were actually working together, co-conspiring against their rulers to kind of usurp them and overthrow them. Because obviously they're always dickbags and they're always going to try to do things like this. And so this was their big idea here. We're going to fuck over these rulers. We're going to arrange these murders, and we're going to take over. And so that was the idea. But they did not predict shit spinning out of hand like this. You get the idea that they did not see this kind of shit happening here. Like, sure, there'd be a war, but they didn't think there would be a war. Like, this shit got real serious real quick. The retaliation continued to the point where the Atlanteans ended up absolutely destroying, decimating, and drowning Themyscira, the home island of the Amazons. And so now the Amazons didn't even really truly have a homeland anymore. That's how serious this shit got. And it doesn't stop there. Obviously, as a bit of crown, kind of like a crown of conquest, Diana wears Mara's crown on her head to taunt and to prod Arthur. And Arthur may make some jabs here and there about the Themyscira, how it's no more. They start doing a lot of petty shit, but it continues on from there. Probably, at least to this point, the biggest thing that happens here is the decimation of most of Europe. So, yeah, millions of people are killed as this war literally and figuratively spills onto Europe and becomes one big battleground between the Atlanteans and the Amazons. And so millions of people die. And it's not even so much that either side of this war care about those people. They're just casualties of war. It's whatever. They're human. We don't really give a shit about them. But this war was a good place for the Amazons to kind of camp out, because they lost their homeland. But it was also a good spot for this war to take place at, for both sides. And so now this war, during this current moment in Flashpoint, this war is still an ongoing thing, and it looks like it's getting worse. I think one of the things that I really enjoy about Event Omnis And let me also describe by what I mean when I say event omnis. So omni, clearly I just shortened omnibus, a collection of comic books. But event omnibus, that is an omnibus that instead of being focused on a particular run, meaning like a stretch of comic books, or instead of it being focused on a titular character, an event omnibus is focused on a big event, something that is big enough, nasty enough, dangerous enough that usually calls for all superpowered people to come together to find a way to stop this threat. So, for an example, an event omnibus would be something like Infinity Gauntlet or Avengers versus X Men or King in Black. Or for DC, it would be something like Blackest Night, Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis, or, and most obviously, Flashpoint. The idea behind a good event omnibus is you want to make sure that everything in there matters. And a lot of that does depend on the writing, and a lot of it depends on the mapping, how the book is structured, how the book reads. Like if you just read the book from page one to page whatever the ending is, does it read as one cohesive story, or is it lazy mapping? Some omnis do have lazy mapping. What a what a bad, I won't say a bad, but what a kind of a mediocre omnibus would do is you get the actual event, which on average is 4 to 6 issues, and then you get all the tie-ins. And the worst case scenario is if the tie-ins is just various different heroes fighting random groups of henchmen or underlings or whatever, just showcasing you how these other superheroes are wasting their time while the main heroes were in the main actual event. That's never really appealed to me that much. I'm looking at you, Avengers versus X-Men. You're probably the biggest culprit for that. But what a good omnibus does is it gives you a tie-in. It gives you like a Road to Flashpoint. Or in the case of the Flashpoint omnibus, you get the Reverse Flash origin story, then you get the Road to Flashpoint. But then what makes it more interesting is that you don't just get the Flashpoint 5 issue miniseries. You get like issue one, and then you get like the Booster Gold tie-in, and then you get issue two, and it's like the Flashpoint Batman tie-in, and then you get issue three, and then you get another tie-in, and they do this to so that when you read the omnibus, it helps you get more ingrained into the world and understand more about how this world is a living, breathing thing, and it makes the event feel bigger. It makes the stakes feel higher. And the whole reason I'm going on this little spiel right now is because there's a section here where we see that we see how this flood that just overthrows Europe and just decimates it. We see it from like the standpoint or the viewpoint of like an average, kind of person. Well, I say average. This person isn't really average. So there's a magic user by the name of Tracy 13. Um, yeah, I think she was probably created around like the '06 era. At least that's around the time I remember first seeing her. But anyways, we go to Tracy 13, and she's in France with her family, right? Her mother is another powerful magic user. Her dad is kind of a magic skeptic, which is always funny to me. And he works for Hive. I'm not sure if he's always worked for Hive, or if he just works for Hive in this universe. But for those of you who don't know, Hive is, to me, they're like the DC equivalent of AIM, Advanced Ideal Mechanics. And so they're like a group. Typically, they have more or less nefarious means, and they have like the resources to do things that may or may not be dangerous, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Hive, on average, isn't quite as bad or as evil as AIM, but more times than not, yeah, they're up to no good. But anyways, Tracy and her family is like her parents, and like I think she has two brothers. They're all sitting around and they're having a meal together, and her mom is a precog. So she gets premonitions about things to come. and her mom is suddenly hit with this vicious precognition, and she tells Tracy, "Hey, I love you. I love your brothers, and you've been the best husband." She says that to her husband, obviously. And Tracy, what's about to happen isn't your fault. Don't blame yourself. I love you. And she goes through this whole spiel, and then they are ravaged by this huge earthquake and tsunami from the Atlanteans as they're trying to decimate Europe. And Tracy is only able to get her and her father out of there. The mother and the brothers, they all die. And now the whole reason I bring this up, this little side story, is just to show the amount of tragedy that this war has caused. And when you see it from a different POV, again, it makes it feel more grand than what it would feel otherwise. So seeing that this affected other people, actually, to see how this really just kind of impacts people on a personal level, makes this thing feel even bigger. And I love that about good omnis. If you can make something feel bigger, it's always better. Bigger is better. So this war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons is only getting worse, and the government does have people on the ground and trying to get intel, trying to figure out weaknesses, trying to figure out a way that they can stop this thing from happening. Because if they just decimated Europe, I mean, surely all the other countries or continents are next, and they don't give a shit about human lives, and so this thing is just going to culminate with the death of hell, probably everybody. And so what ends up happening here is that we at one point see Steve Trevor, who is a U.S. agent of some sorts. He has his feet on the ground over there, and he's actually trying to rendezvous with Lois Lane, who is like an investigative journalist trying to get intel as well. Steve Trevor's job at this point is to get Lois out of there, but unfortunately, he is caught and captured by the Amazons, and he is lassoed of truth by Wonder Woman, and he's forced to spill the beans about his role there and about what he's doing, and he's killed for his troubles by Wonder Woman. Imagine that kind of irony, seeing Wonder Woman kill Steve Trevor of all people. Like, wow. So yeah, this war is picking up in a really really big way here, and it's only getting bigger and it's only getting worse. And again, I'm only glossing over some of the events of some of the tie-ins. This shit gets way deeper, so definitely check that out, homies, because it's definitely worth a read. But the way that this whole thing ends here is that we go back to our three main protagonists, which would be the Flash, Cyborg, and Batman. They are able to get the better of the guards and to escape, only because Element Woman shows up, her crazy ass, with her crazy powers. She shows up and she helps them take care of the guards. This allows the trio to escape, and Element Woman says that, hey, she'll still fight for Cyborg, even if no one else will. So that's something. Barry Allen is continuing to have sorts of seizures, and these seizures are a result of his memories fading over. So the memories that he used to have are now becoming memories that exist only in this universe, and he's spazzing out over it. They end up taking him to the Shazam fam. It's good to see these kids again. For all the faults that the movie had, I never had an issue with like the kids in those movies, and so even just seeing them in comic book format it's good to see these kids. And they actually they got more panel space, more panel time in the comic book than I remembered. They actually get quite a bit of panel economy in this comic book here. But the only reason that Barry is really there, or that Flash or Cyborg is there for that matter, is to see if they can help Barry. They know that Captain Thunder, as they call him, utilizes some sort of electric powers, and that they saw Captain Thunder revive somebody at one point, and so they want to see if they can help Barry. And they can't, but they do eventually all agree to help to help Cyborg, to help fight this war from a third side. And so now the team is growing. Here's the issue, though. Thomas is still being an asshole about this whole thing. He's kind of reneged on his initial agreement. He's like, look, I don't give a shit about this war. And he even confronts Barry. Barry, why do you give a damn about this war? This war is pointless. This war is useless. If your plan is right and if you're really going to fix all of this, then this war doesn't matter. And I think Barry kind of hits him, not physically, of course, but Barry kind of hits him in a way that really drives home the idea of what it means to be a hero without being so corny. You know, Barry says to him, like, look, I know that if we're able to make this plan work, then we can save people. I mean, we can bring your son back to life, and we can bring the world back to how it should be. But these are still innocent people. And if there's a way that we can stop this from happening, then we need to stop this from happening. It's because Barry Allen's a good guy, you know, so he still doesn't want these people to die, regardless of if he's going to try to undo the damages that were done here. And so now that they've gotten Batman on the team officially, so many of the other heroes from the beginning of the book, they also agree to join sides with Cyborg, and so now they have a small army, and they're going to go out there and they're going to go fight the Atlanteans and the Amazons, because who the fuck else is going to go do it? So they end up going to Europe, and they end up waging this war, or entering this war. And let me tell you, this shit gets crazy. There's a lot going on here. This is also the introduction of the Wildstorm comic book characters into the DC universe also. So this is a very clever way for them to officially write in the at the time the recently purchased Wildstorm comic book characters and to put them properly in the DC universe. And so we see them a lot here too. Guys like Grifter. I'm sure that if nothing else, most people know the Grifter. The Grifter even made it into the fucking animated movie, you know. He's one of the more popular Wildstorm comic book characters. So always fun to see him. So anywho, this battle takes place, but then we realize that there has been a turncoat. There's been somebody working for the Amazons the whole time, and it was Enchantress, who was a part of the Secret Seven. She was actually up to no good the whole time, and she eliminates one of the big guns being Captain Thunder. And yeah, Captain Thunder, he's down. She uses her magic. I believe she uses her magic first to turn him back into a boy, and then kills him. Kills Billy Batson. And so Billy is dead, and all the other kids are there looking on in horror. And I'm like, this is fucking awful. Like, they just killed Billy Batson. Like, holy shit. And all the other kids were there to see it. And now that he's dead, the way that this version of Shazam works, the way that Captain Thunder works, it looks like they're kind of like Captain Planet, if we're being honest, because it takes all of them to come together to make Captain Thunder. But now that Billy's dead, you get the idea that they can't do that. Like, there needs to be someone else, but there's not. And so Enchantress's plan was really sound. Like, she played the role of the turncoat perfectly, and she eliminated a very big gun. Also, of course, what we end up seeing here is, while we're on this battlefield, who else shows up but your Barthon himself? It's always interesting to me because, like, the way that Reverse Flash is mentioned so much in this book, you would think that he plays a bigger role than he actually does, but he doesn't. And so yeah, Reverse Flash shows up eventually, but it is important to mention that another big gun does show up to help this fight, and that is Superman. Now, Superman doesn't even know a whole lot about what's going on here, but he starts kicking ass nonetheless. At this point, he's more like the Hulk, just like point and aim and hope that he doesn't kill any of your guys, you know. But he does tend to go for the Atlanteans and the Amazonians, so that's good. What is also important to remember here is that the road is getting fucked up. in the process. Uh, the world is being erased. Like it's kind of imploding upon itself. And so Barry's window of opportunity here is not very good, not very strong either. But as Reverse Flash is here, he begins to beat the shit out of Barry Allen, and also he beats the shit out of Thomas Wayne as well. But while this is all happening here, Barry is so pissed at Eobard because of the state of the world. Like Eobard has done some terrible shit, but this may arguably be the worst thing that Eobard has ever done. But Thawne says to Barry, "Oh no, this isn't me. This is all you're doing. You did this, Barry." And he uses one of his you know one of his Speed Force powers. The Speed Force is like the Force. The Speed Force is the Force. It's a catch-all. Like you can do whatever with the Speed Force, just like Star Wars characters can do whatever with the Force. Anyways, Reverse Flash uses the Speed Force to uh, reset the vibrational frequencies of Barry's brain to help Barry remember what he did. And that's when we get the realization that it was not Eobard Thawne who changed the universe, it was Barry. In a fit of grief and desperation, Barry Allen ran back in time to save his mother so that she would never be killed by Reverse Flash. And in doing so, it altered the events of everything else that happened in the world, in the universe, even if we're being honest. And because of that, we end up with this universe that we have now, the Flashpoint universe. And so this is all Barry's fault. He wanted to save his mom's life, which is very noble, but in doing so, he he made the world, not even arguably, but definitely he made the world a worse place for it. And so we see Barry and Reverse Flash continue to fight, but man, Barry, he's kind of beside himself right now because hell, he did this, but now Barry knows it's up to him to fix it. But at this time is also when we get the realization that Thawne is as happy as can be, not just because Barry is the one who fucked up the world. Thawne is also happy because now he is officially untethered. And what I mean by that is in comics past, Thawne has always been tethered to Barry because if it's not for Barry, then Thawne doesn't get his powers. Reverse Flash needs Barry Allen to become the Flash and be the Flash in order for Thawne to be the Reverse Flash and to tap into the negative Speed Force. So if there is no Barry Allen, or if there never was a Barry Allen, or if there was never a Flash, then there can be no Reverse Flash. And if Barry Allen dies, then there is no Reverse Flash. And so because of that, Thawne has always been a very interesting villain because he could torment Barry, but technically speaking, he could never really kill him. But because when Barry ran back in time to save his mom, Thawne was also in the Speed Rift at the same time. So because that happens, he wasn't in any one particular place in time when that happened. So when Barry runs back in time, Thawne is in between time, so to speak, and that breaks the tether. So now Thawne is no longer tethered to Barry Allen, meaning that he can kill Barry. He can go back in time and kill Barry. He can do whatever he wants to Barry, and it doesn't matter. Thawne, in all intents and purposes, is now a paradox. He can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants now. He already had loose limitations on what he could do, but now there's no limitations on what Thawne can do. And he's relishing in this as he is pummeling the shit out of Barry. But he gets a little too happy and a little too full of himself. Because as he's pummeling Barry into a pulp, Reverse Flash is stabbed through the back by none other than Batman, Thomas Wayne himself. So Thomas Wayne is actually the one who gets the, not going to call it a killing blow, but who deals the final blow to Thawne in this issue. And yeah, so because of this now, everything is kind of hitting the fan. I already mentioned earlier how Grifter and his crew comes up. I forgot Etrigan is also here, along with Black Canary and the Squadron Supreme. I think they're getting an animated TV show within the next couple of years. They are also here, and they all show up as well. But during this whole melee, uh, Batman gets mortally wounded. I already mentioned how Superman shows up to save the day. As Batman has been mortally wounded, he gives Barry Allen a letter that he wrote, and he says to fix this and take the letter to his son. And have the panels put up right here, and as the world is kind of unraveling all around them, quite literally, the world is now unraveling. Barry, as he takes the letter from from Thomas, he says, "How can I run away from this?" Meaning, how can I run away from the impending doom of this planet, of this universe? And Thomas replies, "The same reason I can leave this world behind. I know a better world will replace it. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry about your mother." And that's the last words that Thomas Wayne says before he seemingly dies. That and that's probably like one of the best lines of this story to me. Like one of the best, one of the best lines spoken in this entire story. And there's some good lines here. There's some gems, but that's got to be one of the best for me. You know, Barry's asking how can he leave behind all this chaos, death, and destruction. And Thomas says the same way that I can leave this world behind because I know that a better one will replace it. And then he apologizes for what Barry has to do concerning his mom. And so Barry, he does what he does. He runs. Run, Barry. And Barry runs back in time to that fateful day to his mom. And this time he confronts her dead on. You know, he is Barry Allen, full grown man, not the little boy Barry, but full grown Barry in the Flash outfit, takes his mask off, and he sits down and he explains this entire situation to his mom. And they have one last conversation, and it's the idea that yeah, this all really sucks, but it's got to be done. I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? Like this situation may suck, but if you think about it, at least Barry gets this moment. How many people out there wish they could have this moment with a loved one? How many people wish they could have one last conversation before they have to say goodbye? Barry got that. So Barry, he runs and he visits his mom one last time before he goes back in time to stop this from happening. And the way he does that is he uses the cosmic treadmill to run back to the moment where he was originally running back to save his mom. And so we see two Barrys on the panel at the same time. And current Barry throws desperate Barry off of the cosmic treadmill. And when that happens, we see a fracture. It looks like a fracture in the speed force, a fracture in space time. And we see like three different branches of universes coming off here. One of those looks like the one of them is obviously the Wildstorm universe. That's how they officially bring those guys into the main DC universe. It's like one of them is like kind of the more classic DC universe, and one is like from the future. One is like current day DC universe. And so we see three different iterations of comic books coming together. And Barry hears a voice talking to him, and the voice says, "Because the history of the heroes was shattered into three a long time ago, that's why there are three timelines. They were splintered to weaken your world for their impending arrival. You must all stand together. The timelines must become one again. You can help me fix that, but at a cost." And so this mysterious voice says that to Barry. Now, at the time, who was this voice supposed to be versus who was it implied that the voice ended up being? That's a whole kind of another big discussion. As a matter of fact, some point down the line, I'm going to re-review DC Universe Rebirth. Kevin and I reviewed that some years ago, but we actually reviewed that so long ago that Doomsday Clock hadn't even come out yet. That's how long ago Kevin and I reviewed that comic book. But sometime here in the future, I like to re-review DC Universe Rebirth, Batman Flash the Button, and then Doomsday Clock. Those three books pair really well together, and they all kind of work as pseudo sequels to Flashpoint. But anyway, so Barry runs back in time, and when he wakes up again, it's just as it was at the beginning of the story. He's back at the office, and so he wakes up and he goes to the Batcave, and he talks with Bruce, and Bruce can tell by the look on Barry's face that something happened, and so they have words and they talk about the whole ordeal that Barry just went through, and excuse me. So by the end of it, Barry feels really upset that he let that happen, that he let himself go back in time to try to save his mom and whatnot. And Bruce says, if I had your power, I would have tried the exact same thing. And don't think I haven't thought about it, you know. So at least Bruce isn't trying to beat up Barry because, as far as Batman knows, nothing's changed, right? I mean, everything is still the same. Uh, but what's interesting here is that Barry says that something interesting has also happened, though. Like, he still has residual memories that he's never experienced. So Barry says, for example, I remember taking my driver's test with my mom when I turned 16, but obviously that couldn't have never really happened because Barry's mom was dead when he was 16. But he still has residual memories from the Flashpoint universe. And so he's basically saying, hopefully, you know, these memories will reside after some time. Um, and Batman just tells Barry to think of those memories as a gift, which is, yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Like he had that moment with his mom, and now he has these memories with his mom that didn't even really happen in this reality. It's kind of a gift. And it's after Bruce says that Barry remembers to give Bruce a letter, the same letter that Thomas gave to Barry for Barry to give to Bruce. And I don't know the exact contents of this letter. I don't know who knows the exact contents of the letter. Maybe someone does know somewhere. It could be on the internet. Maybe Jeff Johns knows. He's the one who wrote the damn book. But what I can do is just read from you guys the little bit that we can see. And that is not a lot, so I apologize in advance. But the letter, we see the words, Dear son, there's only one thing that I know about life. I know some things happen by chance, and that's all we see. But we know that there's a lot more to the letter. And actually, shit. I don't want to go off on another tangent here, but if you guys want to know more about the contents of said letter, um, you get a little bit of that in spoiler alert and Batman Flash the Button. The Button is a great read, by the way. Highly recommend The Button. Um, and then you also get a little bit more of that context clues if you read Tom King's Batman run, which admittedly I can't recommend that. That wasn't my favorite at all. But anywho, this letter right here in this moment is very special. And I think that by not giving the readers exactly what it says is for the best, and letting us fill in the blanks. But clearly and obviously, it really touches Bruce. He's very much moved by the contents of the letter, and it moves him to tears. And he thanks Barry for the letter. And Barry says, "You're welcome, Bruce." And that is where the story ends. And I love that this story ends with that. You know, it's there's so many like little kind of messages here and little cues that we can take from this story. I mean, how many of us wish we could go back in time and fix something that we feel shouldn't have happened or was a mistake, or undo something that happened? I mean, all of us do. A part of the human experience is learning to live with certain regrets. And if we could change those regrets, man, that would literally change a lot. But unfortunately, that is not the world we live in, right? But for Barry Allen, that is a possibility, and he realizes that. I think it speaks to the character of Barry that he didn't think to do that until this moment. But I think when we look at the fact that Barry got to have one last conversation with his mom, and that he gets to have memories of his mom that technically didn't even happen in this reality. Like Bruce said, they're a gift. And when Bruce says that it's a gift, that triggers Barry to remember, oh yeah, speaking of gifts, I have one for you too. And he bestows that letter onto Thomas. I think that it's about I think what it's really trying to tell us, and maybe I'm looking too far into this, I probably am, but I think that we can take away the idea that with our loved ones who have passed away, sometimes our memories of them can be a gift, a way to live with them, even if it is just in our mind's eye, live with them throughout that memory one more time, At least that's the way I like to take that. I think it's a beautiful ending, though, to a tremendous story. And I mean, it's the reason why Flashpoint has been printed and reprinted and printed again over and over and over again. I mean, it's got so many formats. I myself own the Flashpoint story 3 different ways. And I'm not even kidding. Like, that's literal. And I don't even have all the formats of the story. There is an absolute version of Flashpoint as well. So if you guys want to read that book and then view that beautiful artwork and the most pristine format, there you have it. You can go get the absolute version. But that is technically it for the Flashpoint story. There is one more little thing we're going to talk about before we wrap up. I said there would be a small spoiler section for the Flash movie, and I'm going to try to keep this thing short and concise. So, homies, if you are still listening, that means that you have either seen the Flash movie or don't care about spoilers, because I am about to spoil some things that happen in the Flash movie in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I've seen a lot of different takes on the Flash movie, and there's been a lot of different thoughts. But one thing that I think everyone agrees on is that the comic book is superior to the movie. And it's one of those cases where you kind of wish that DC had stuck to their guns, that they had stuck to the source material. And I've said this time and time and time again, that when superhero movies tend to stray from the source material, they tend to lose their way. And when that happens, they can make a fine movie, sure, but they ended up making a subpar movie in comparison to what they could have made had they just stuck to the canon. And now with Flashpoint, there's several things they did that limited, or there's several things that the Flash movie did that limited their success, whereas Flashpoint thrived. One of those things, and I think for me the most obvious thing is this: there is no Reverse Flash. That was a mistake. There is no real. There's technically not a real big bad villain in the Flash movie. It's really just internal struggle for Barry. There is no big bad entity, personage. I mean, if you want to say that the Dark Flash character, who I'm pretty sure they just created for the movie, you want to call him the big bad, I don't think that counts as anything. That's just a manifestation of Barry, like his obsession with wanting to save his friends that he can't. That's all that is. And it was kind of a weak, quote unquote, villain. It was kind of a weak premise too. Like, I get what they were trying to do there, but in relation to what we got, it's just not effective. And I'm not here just to shit on the movie. I mean, the internet has done that enough. I enjoyed the movie for what it was, but I also have to acknowledge the flaws that the movie had as well. Another flaw that I had for this movie is that from the beginning of the movie, we see Barry run back in time. And this kind of ties into the problem with the Reverse Flash not being in the movie. Because we see Barry run back in time from the beginning, we know that this is all Barry's fault. And the beauty of this comic book is that we are led to think that this is all the doing of Reverse Flash. And then in that last issue, when we get the realization that no, this is the result of Barry. This is kind of his selfishness and his guilt and his grief that led him to do this. This has nothing to do with Reverse Flash. He's just reaping the benefits of what Barry did. That was a tremendous reveal, an extremely powerful reveal. Whereas in the movie, just from the get go, we see Barry make that run. Now, I thought it was a great scene with enhanced by a wonderful score when Barry ran back to go save his mom. But I think that the placement of that was wrong. Don't show us that until the third act, until the end. Thomas Wayne not being in the movie, I'm sorry, that was a mistake. I know that I understand completely why they put Keaton in the movie. I get it. I really do. I understand the reasoning why, but I'm saying that they were wrong in this case. The reason that they put Keaton in the movie as Bruce Wayne is because nostalgia, and it worked for No Way Home, and so surely it will work here. They were hoping and banking on Batman saving this movie to a degree. And here's the thing, according to what I'm seeing right now, he is really not doing that. So hindsight is 2020, but I understand why they wanted to put such nostalgia bait in the movie to drive a lot of the casual fans into the theater. I get it. On paper, I would have thought that that would have worked too, but I never would have thought that it would be a better story than Thomas Wayne. Because if you do not have Thomas Wayne in the story, you can't do the letter scene. You can't have Bruce receive the letter from his father. And to repeat something that the homie Caleb said, only Ben Affleck's version of Batman could feasibly pull off that scene. And they had the opportunity and they squandered it. And instead we got George Clooney. No offense, George, but I mean, I would have much preferred to see the letter scene than to see you make a cameo appearance. Other things that this movie messed up, or I don't want to say messed up, but other missed opportunities. I really dig the idea of having Zod, being in this movie and having the destruction of, or having him, terraforming Earth, kind of be like the big bad impending doom that they have to stop. But here's the thing. This movie clearly had access to both Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and they did not use either of them. Think about how incredible that would have been if they had utilized those two characters and given us the war. We would have been able to see versions of these characters that we will literally never see again. We would have had the opportunity to see those two go at it with each other. We would have had the opportunity to see that war play out. And it would have been such a cool opportunity to see, like, just full on fury Wonder Woman, and to see Aquaman not be a happy drunk. It would have been the opportunity for them to both be serious, intense, and fierce. It would have been great. I think that would have only enhanced the movie. And again, especially since all they had to do was reach out and just utilize those two characters. They being the filmmakers wanted to go a different direction from the movie. They thought that if they just did what was on the pages of the comic book, that it would be too, I guess, predictable. Man, listen, here's the thing, man. Like I'm not trying to compare, any other literature to Lord of the Rings. I know how those fans are, so don't take it that way. But there's a reason why Peter Jackson did his damnedest to not defer or to not, do anything that didn't happen in the book. There's a reason why he wanted to stick to what happens in the pages of the Lord of the Rings. There's a reason why he stuck to it, because he knew it was a good story and he knew it worked. And the box office speaks for itself. All the awards those movies won speak for themselves. Imagine how much better this Flash movie could have been had they just tried. The hardest thing to do for them would have been to introduce the Reverse Flash because we haven't seen him yet. But I think there's so much fun you could do with that. There is so much fun you could do with that. I think by introducing the Reverse Flash, I think that would have given the movie a lot of gravitas. And here's the thing, like, Reverse Flash technically doesn't even play a big role in this story, but you still need him here, you know? So how do you put Reverse Flash in this movie? Well, like I said before, hindsight is 2020, and this is just at this point Monday morning quarterbacking. But at the same time, once you think about the fact that they went out, they again being the filmmakers, they went out of their way to not give us a Flashpoint story when they knew they could have. That's the part that stings the most. And I think that for the folks at Warner Brothers, that's got to be the thing that stings the most too, was that they were banking on this movie being a huge success, and unfortunately, it's not. I don't think the movie deserves all of the hate that some people are giving it. I think that the movie is fine. I think it's fun. I think it has a ton of flaws and imperfections, and I don't think it holds a candle to the Flashpoint story. So, with that all being said, I think the best way to introduce Reverse Flash into the movie would be I would introduce the concept of a yellow demon. At the beginning of the movie, I would have had Barry have a series of nightmares that involve a blurry yellow red-eyed demon that's hunting him or haunting him, harming his loved ones, and then you can go into like the fun little opening fight scene / chase scene that the movie gives us, and have Barry be off his game a little bit. And when he talks with Bruce afterwards about why he was off his game, have Bruce ask him, "What's going on, Barry? What's wrong?" You have Barry lament to Bruce saying, "Man, I keep having these nightmares about this yellow demon." Bruce, being who he is saying that the yellow demon is just a manifestation of your own guilt and grief, Barry. It's not real. It's not anything you need to worry about. It's just you getting inside of your own head as your worst fears come to life. So that's how I would introduce the idea of the Reverse Flash. Then I have Barry go to bed and have him wake up and he be in this new Flashpoint universe. But when he goes to bed, he has one more really intense dream about this demon and about his mom and trying to save his mom. And then he wakes up and he's in this new universe. That's how I would have done it. That's how I would have introduced the Reverse Flash. That's kind of the premise that I think I would have gone with. Obviously, it's rough around the edges, but, that's just me spitting off the top. You know what I mean? Like a freestyle rapper, just coming off top of the dome with that one. But yeah, I think that's probably what I would have done in terms of introducing the character. You can show him more fully throughout a fight scene, maybe in the second act where he definitely gets the better hand, and then you bring him into the light and give him actual speaking lines in the third act. Just make them impactful and mean something. That's what I would have done. Flashpoint Batman is an easy fix. The Amazon Atlantean War, that's easy for them to put in. I say easy, relatively speaking. In terms of like litigation and red tape, would have been easy. There were ways to make this movie better, but they thought they had a better idea, and they didn't. But I think that's going to be it for this one, guys. I think I have rambled on long enough. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I myself most certainly did. Flashpoint, one of my favorite modern DC stories, and for good reason. And there's still some of the tie-ins in the Flashpoint Omnibus that I haven't read yet, so I'm probably going to try to read some of those, but like I said before, I have a lot of reading to do, guys. I have to actually finish White Sand. That is a graphic novel written by Brandon Sanderson The homie Caleb and I will be discussing that very soon. I'm actually I think I got like one or two more chapters of that left, and that'll be it. We'll be discussing that on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to breaking that down because there's a lot of fun stuff in that book, man. And the homie Caleb is a big connoisseur of the Cosmere, and I myself am not that familiar with it, so it'll be a fun fish out of water experience for me to kind of sit in the passenger seat and let somebody else explain what the fuck a comic book means. So that'll be fun. And like I said, I also will be reading Secret Invasion again for the TV show. And I'll be talking about that throughout the release of the shorty episodes where I review the TV show. So again, guys, there's a lot of fun things coming down the pipeline. I'm really looking forward to what we have to come. Thank you guys again for being homies and for sticking with me through thick and thin. You guys are the bomb diggity. And despite what anyone says, I love you guys. I don't know who would tell you otherwise. But that's it for now. I will talk to you guys again soon. But until then, my name is Superhero Homie Q. Till next time.